Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 6 wide receiver start or sit decisions for the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, I'll be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the wide receivers in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, to please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. I would also like to note that there are going to be 4 teams on bye in week number 6. The Detroit Lions, the Tennessee Titans, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Houston Texans. So there are going to be more players that you are going to have to potentially reach for that might be guys that are typically on your bench that may have to be starts this week because of the bye. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about week number 6, to please make sure that you ask down below in the comment section. I love to talk to you guys down there. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Washington Commanders at the Chicago Bears. And if I'm being honest with you guys, this year feels like it has been the worst year ever for primetime football games. All of these primetime games have been pretty bad, and this week, things don't get better. We got the Commanders at the Bears. I know, oh, Nick, the Eagles versus the Cowboys. Sure, that's kind of exciting, but then Monday Night Football is another Denver Broncos game. It's just shocking how bad the primetime games have been. Now, maybe it's just recency bias, right? Maybe I don't remember past years where the primetime games were bad, but it feels like to start off the season, the first 6 weeks, a lot of these primetime games have been awful. So the Commanders at the Chicago Bears. Here, the only team that actually has wide receivers that I'm comfortable starting is the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin as well as Curtis Samuel are going to be starts for me. Now, if you drafted Terry McLaurin where he was going at his average draft position in August or early September, then you're probably disappointed with the production that Terry McLaurin has been putting up. Now, Terry McLaurin hasn't necessarily been screwing you over, absolutely taking a dump on your chest every single week if you start him, but he's also not really taking you over the top. He's kind of just been pretty mid this season. Curtis Samuel started off pretty strong. Recently, he's been just meh. They are going up against the Bears defense, and the Bears defense hasn't been ideal. So I think both Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel are start-worthy wide receivers, but they are nowhere near the top. Dyami Brown did end up playing good on Sunday in that game for the Commanders up against the Atlanta Titans, but honestly, that felt more like a fluke over a guy that you want to be starting in your lineup every single week. The Bears just run the ball too much for any of their wide receivers to be start-worthy. Darnell Mooney was a guy that I was all aboard the fucking hype train all offseason long. I was the conductor, choo-choo, of the Darnell Mooney hype train. I thought, you know what? The Bears don't really have that many options to throw the ball to. They drafted a wide receiver who's like 30 years old, Velus Jones Jr. They have Byron Pringle, Equanimeous St. Brown. They don't really have a lot of options. So Justin Fields is going to key in on, he's going to laser on that laser eyes meme that you've seen before onto Darnell Mooney, and that has not been the case at all. The team just does not throw the ball enough. Mooney has been better. I will agree with that. Darnell Mooney made a fantastic catch last week, a highlight reel level play, but it doesn't fucking matter if he isn't throwing the ball more. So for right now, Darnell Mooney's a sit, as is all of these Bears wide receivers. They just run the ball far too much for any of these wide receivers to be start-worthy. Next up, we move to the San Francisco 49ers at the Atlanta Falcons. In this game, I only like 2 of the wide receivers. Deebo Samuel is obviously a must-start wide receiver every single week. Now, to start off the season, things were quite slow for Deebo Samuel, right? He was getting like 10 to 14 points a game, and obviously, that's not bad, but when you drafted him in the 2nd or the 3rd round, obviously, you had much higher hopes for Deebo Samuel. But recently, he's been playing significantly better, and they get the Atlanta Falcons this week, so obviously Deebo Samuel has the spot to potentially be a smash wide receiver this week, and honestly, he could be the #1 wide receiver at the end of the week. For the Atlanta Falcons, we'll be firing up my boy Drizzy Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, to start off the season, the guy was really good. Recently, not as much, but Drake London is still the clear number one receiver on the team. I understand that they're playing the 49ers, but Marcus Mariota has actually looked really good. Marcus Mariota has impressed me. I'm not saying that he's definitely going to be the starter of the Falcons next year, but he's impressed me enough to be like, you know what? I'm still comfortable playing Drake London. I honestly don't think Kyle Pitts is going to end up suiting up on Sunday. Obviously, that is something to monitor because if Kyle Pitts does end up suiting up, then obviously things will be a little bit different, but I still like Drake London even in that scenario because the team has yet to just key in on Kyle Pitts. While they drafted this guy super highly, not this year, but last year, they draft this guy who everyone talks about. He's like a fucking superhuman. He's like Superman out there. He's this athletic freak. But for some reason, Arthur Smith just doesn't like him, but he does love Mr. Drizzy Drake London for the Falcons. They have a couple of other wide receivers, Kadero Hodge or Olamide Zacchaeus, who might end up finding the end zone in this game. But if I'm being honest with you, there's no reason why you should be starting them. Then we got Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings for the San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Ayuk has been pretty interesting because we all know that he has that big game inside of him, that he has a week where he could score 25 plus points. The issue is with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G-Spot, Jimmy Guap under center, do you really see the 49ers throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns in a given game to where Brandon Ayuk could really have that ceiling game? Now, Deebo Samuel can make up for the lack of passing touchdowns by just running the ball in or getting a crazy amount of rushing yards. Brandon Ayuk does not have that upside. I think Ayuk's a good player. I just don't really feel comfortable playing him at this point. If there was ever a week to play him, it would be up against the Falcons, but even still, I find myself very shy to want to start him. Next up, we move to the New England Patriots at the Cleveland Browns. Here, we're only going to be firing up 2 receivers as well. Jakobi Meyers has proved from last year and this year when he's playing, it doesn't matter who the fucking quarterback is. Bailey Zappi, Bailey Crappy, Bailey Happy, who gives a fuck? Jakobi Meyers has the upside to be a top 12 wide receiver every single week. Now, we all know that Jakobi Meyers struggles at finding touchdowns. Like, some dudes struggle to get it up. They need some Viagra. Jakobi Meyers struggles at scoring touchdowns. Last week with Bailey Zappi, he found the end zone. This week up against the Cleveland Browns, even if it's Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi, again, I don't give a fuck. I still want to be starting Jakobi Meyers because even though they really want to run the ball down the throat of their opponents, like they're going to want to run the ball full steam ahead with Ramondre Stevenson this game because Damian Harris is out multiple weeks, they're still going to find a way to get the ball into Jakobi Meyers' hands. And Jakobi Meyers is the crystal clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. Amari Cooper has been pretty solid all season long. We are going to obviously see games where David Njoku maybe gets like 10 or 12 targets and maybe that slightly dismantles Amari Cooper. This matchup definitely isn't ideal up against the Patriots. But if I'm being honest with you, I think the Patriots had a ceiling game against the Lions. Well, obviously, right? The Lions didn't score a single point. Bill Belichick kind of owns Jared Goff dating back to that Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Rams when Goff was the quarterback there. I think that the Browns offense plays better than the Lions offense did last week. I think Amari Cooper is start worthy. But honestly, if you were to ask me head to head, who would I prefer? I think right now, based upon where we're sitting in the week on Tuesday, I would rather start Jakobi Meyers over Amari Cooper. For the other wide receivers, the Patriots also have Devontae Paca, Nelson Aguilar, but again, even regardless of who the quarterback is, they really key in on the running game and throwing the ball to Jakobi Meyers. So sure, Devontae Parker or Aguilar could have a big game, but that's hard to predict in my opinion, so I'd rather leave them on the bench. Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ, David Bell, these other non-Amari Cooper and David Njoku targets in the pass-catching game just are not ideal in my opinion. Next up, we move to the New York Jumbo Jets at the Green Bay Packers. The Packers play in London last week up against the Giants and ultimately lose that game, which was shocking in my opinion. The Packers were big favorites, but I did note before the game that in England, when these games are played overseas, crazy shit typically happens. Typically, a team that might be significantly better than the other team plays down to their opponent. They don't look as good. The games are typically more low scoring compared to high scoring, so it's pretty interesting. I hope someone looks into that eventually to figure out why this happens. But the Packers shit the bed regardless, right? Even though the game's in London, I'm not just going to sugarcoat things, right? The Packers shit the bed mightily. Allen Lazard had a good game. Romeo Doubs was kind of not playing too hot in that game. He had a bad game, but I think he bounces back here up against the Jumbo Jets. So I want to be firing up both Allen Lazard and Romeo Dubes. We saw a healthy dosage of Randall Cobb on Sunday morning in that game, but if I'm being honest with you, I don't think that's the normal. I do think Allen Lazard are the 1 and 2 wide receivers. Allen Lazard and Romeo Dubes are the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers on the Green Bay Packers. For the Jumbo Jets, now, a couple of weeks ago with Mr. Cool Joe Flacco, I loved Garrett Wilson because it seemed like Joe Flacco was keying in on Garrett Wilson. He was force-feeding this motherfucker the ball. But now, with the other Wilson under center, the MILF hunter himself, Zach Milfson, then Garrett Wilson has kind of disappeared. He's done his John Cena, you can't see me, his Houdini. He fucking disappears. Now, could he reappear deep down the season because he's so talented and he just needs time to mesh with Zach Wilson? 100%. But right now, I don't really feel comfortable playing any of these guys. Corey Davis seems like the guy that Zach Wilson likes the most. So if I had to start any of them, I would start Corey Davis. But even Corey Davis didn't have all that great of a day up against the Dolphins because it was a very run-heavy attack up against that Dolphins defense, and the Packers defense just had a train ran on them by Saquon Barkley. So I think the Jets are going to look to do a similar thing, try to run the ball down the throat of the Packers. Next up, we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, back-to-back dud games out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if we've learned anything this season, it's that regardless of how the teams change, there are some teams that are still the same. The Jaguars are still the Jaguars. Even with the new Doug Peterson sent on the team, somehow, some way, they're still the Jaguars. They're still that team that when you put a lot of expectations on them, typically things don't end up working out too well. Now, Christian Kirk has not played well through the last 2 games, but I am not ready to panic yet. I'm not ready to jump off the Christian Kirk train because the Christian Kirk bandwagon continues to chug along because Christian Kirk is the clear number 1 target on this Jaguars offense. Now, we're going to be talking about James Robinson a little bit later in the running back start or sit video. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notified later when I talk about running backs. But I'm a little bit more worried. I'm a lot more worried about James Robinson when compared to Christian Kirk. I think the Jaguars will get back on track. If they don't do it here up against the Colts, then clearly something is very, very, very wrong with this team. So Christian Kirk, I'm going to roll him out there. Michael Pittman Jr. is an obvious start every single week. Obviously, this Colts offense has been the exact opposite of what I thought they were going to do. I blamed Carson Wentz for a lot of the reasons, a lot of the faults to why they weren't super good last year, why they choked up against the Jaguars at the end of the season. But ultimately, it looks like Carson Wentz might have been the better choice to be the QB1 this year over Matty Ice Baby because Matt Ryan has looked cold. And not the cool kind of cold like the kids my age would say, oh, that guy's cold. No. Matt Ryan's cold in a bad way. He's fucking freezing cold. Jack Frost level cold. The guy's awful. But even with that said, I think Michael Pittman still gets it done, and Alec Pierce, if you're in a deeper league, will be a start because he continues to get ramped up more and more targets. They don't really have anyone besides Michael Pittman to throw the ball to. They're on to these backup running backs. Jonathan Taylor's availability is up in the air. I think he's going to play, but he won't be at 100%. Perry Campbell has not worked out at all, so Alec Pierce is a start-worthy wide receiver. Zay Jones and Alec Pierce are kind of in a similar range for me. It's just I would prefer Alec Pierce over Jones in this game. I think it's definitely in the realm of possibilities that they see a similar amount of targets in this game. I just personally think that Alec Pierce is immensely more talented than Zay Jones. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm just kind of besmirching Zay Jones because if you are in a deeper league, I do think Zay Jones is a decent start against the Colts. But if we're talking about a normal 12-team league, then are you really trying to force Zay Jones into your lineup? Sure, there are teams that are dealing with bye weeks. We talked about the bye weeks at the beginning of today's video. Once we get into these weeks, week 6 on, teams are on bye, you're going to have to roll out players you're not as comfortable with playing on your team. But this week, for me, I don't really want to rely heavily on Zay Jones. Marvin Jones Jr. as well. Kind of sparked up a little bit recently, but still not interesting enough for me. And Paris Campbell looks like a big, fat fucking dud. Next up, we move to the Minnesota Vikings at the Miami Dolphins. Now, my rankings of these wide receivers for the Dolphins are going to change drastically the second we figure out who the starting quarterback is going to be of the Miami Dolphins. Now, based upon what I have read and my understanding of concussion protocol, we're not going to know if Teddy Two Gloves is going to be good to go or if Tua Tagovailoa could potentially play this week until Thursday. Right now, as this video is being recorded, it's Tuesday, so I do not know yet who the starting quarterback is going to be. Now, again, when I say Tua, I'm not saying that I'm fully confident that Tua is going to start in this game, but I do think that it is possible due to the injury timeline that if the Dolphins aren't just looking at kind of the outside view on the team, if they're just looking at, hey, is Tua healthy? Did they clear him to play? Then I think Tua could play. Teddy Bridgewater gets ejected from the fucking game because he stumbled when he got up. Now, I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm wearing my Tua Anon shirt right now. And again, I give all my fantasy takes without bias, but this was absolute bullshit that he got ejected. Go back and watch the fucking game. Go back and watch it. I liked the video multiple times on Twitter. I'll probably retweet it later. There's a video of Teddy. He gets hit. He somehow gets a safety, which doesn't make sense because he threw the ball. It wasn't intentional grounding, but you know what? I'm not even mad at that. I'm just mad at the fact that he didn't even stumble when he got up, and they ruled him out. After this Tua injury, the rules have gone too far. The rules have swung completely in the wrong direction. We saw it with these terrible roughing the passer calls like Brady, the one last night with the Chiefs and the Raiders. We're seeing these awful roughing the passer calls, and I'm wondering if things are going to change. At the end of the day here, if Teddy plays, I'm comfortable with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. If Skylar Thompson plays, then I'm still going to play Hill and Waddle, but I'm not expecting anywhere near as much I would expect with Teddy Two Gloves or Tua Tagovailoa under center. For Justin Jefferson, obviously, I don't need to do this crazy in-depth breakdown for him. You know why I like Justin Jefferson. He's one of, if not the best receiver in the National Football League. Adam Thielen has been pretty up and down all season long. We do know his upside, though, and that is relatively high. Now, we haven't seen him finish inside the top 10 or the top 5 yet this season, but I do think he still has that in him, and the Dolphins' defense is battered. X didn't play last week. Xavier Howard. Byron Jones might not be able to play this week. Things are bad. There's a lot of injuries. So Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen might have a very easy matchup depending on who ends up suiting up for the Dolphins defense. Then there's the other guys on the team, KJ Osborne, who's been a dud. I mean, he looked really good last year, but unless there's an injury to Adam Thielen or Jefferson, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, then there's really no way you can talk yourself into starting Osborne. Cedric Wilson is the team's 4th-string quarterback, so maybe if the refs decide to eject Skylar Thompson, then maybe we see Cedric Wilson play quarterback and he gets a bunch of points, but the Dolphins really overpaid for Cedric Wilson considering they don't use him at all. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the New Orleans Saints, but before we break down this game in depth in terms of the wide receiver position, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Are your best ball teams already cooked? Well, head on over to Underdog Fantasy to resurrect them with their Week 6 through Week 17 best ball tournament. The entry fee is only $10 with $500,000 in total prizes and $100,000 going to first place. And my favorite thing about best ball is that you just draft your team and that's it. There's no waivers. There's no trades. There's no even setting your lineup because Underdog will put in the highest scores on your team at the end of the week. You don't have to worry about sitting Tyler Boyd and maybe the guy goes absolutely fucking bananas and scores 30 points and you lose your week because you sat him even though going into the week it was pretty smart to sit him and he goes crazy. You don't have to worry about things like that. And again, the prize pool is very big. It's only $10 to enter $100,000 going to first place. And maybe your regular fantasy teams aren't doing the best. Maybe your team right now, it's week 6, your team's 2-3. You're kind of worried. You're like, oh no, is this team going to be good? Well, if that team ends up shitting the bed, we're going to hope it doesn't. I'm going to keep on trying to help you guys win. But maybe things don't work out. Maybe some injuries have hit you bad. Then you can hop on here, do some drafts, and follow that through the end of the season. So at least you have something to watch for the rest of the season. Make sure you guys check it out, Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Stokastic for a $100 first match deposit bonus. If you deposit $100, they will give you an additional $100. That's 10 free entries if you deposit $100 into the Best Ball Resurrection Tournament. I know later on in the week when I have more time, well, I guess prior to Thursday Night Football, I'm going to have to load up and do a bunch of these drafts to make sure that I get my shot to win that $100,000. So back on into things, the Cincinnati Bengals at the New Orleans Saints. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are no-brainer starts. Now, Higgins is a guy that we are going to need to monitor because Higgins didn't really play much last week in that game on Sunday Night Football up against the Ravens. And that was a big yikes because Higgins has been looking phenomenal. Now, when he plays, you are going to play him. Now, obviously, there's a chance that we get fucking bamboozled, we get hoodwinked, just like last week, and T. Higgins bends us over and fucks us directly in the ass without even the use of spit. But at the end of the day, if he plays, I'm going to risk it for the biscuit because the upside is so high. Ja'Marr Chase has been not the best this season. He hasn't been, and when I say not the best, I mean like he hasn't really had those crazy boom games. But we know he has it in him. The Bengals team's looking better, so I'm not panicking about Ja'Marr Chase. Chris Olave, if he's able to clear concussion protocol, that concussion did not look the best. Olave has looked incredible this year in his rookie year. Do not cut him. Do not drop him. Again, I'm not saying it's a lock for him to play, something we got to monitor, but if he does play, I'm playing him, even if the Red Rifle Andy Dalton is under center. Tyler, yeah, Boyd is a really interesting play if somehow, for some reason, T. Higgins does not end up going, but I'm assuming T. Higgins plays, so I'm sitting Tyler Boyd. Michael Thomas, if he plays, you're playing him, but based upon what we've seen over the last couple of weeks where I'm like, oh my God, James is coming back, Michael Thomas is coming back, I haven't been right about that yet, so I'm just going to assume that they're not going to play. Based on anything I've read, it doesn't seem like they're super optimistic that he's going to play at this point. Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, the other receivers for the Saints, I don't really want to start them because fucking Taysom Hill, this guy just steals every touchdown. That motherfucker was on fire last week. It was crazy to see. It was like, oh, if you're in a pickle last week, I was like, oh, if you're in a pickle, you can start Taysom Hill. I'm like, Taysom Hill, he might score a touchdown in my head. That's what I'm thinking. He might get like 10 points. And that'd be fine for a tight end, especially with how the tight end scoring has been this year. But this guy just ripped the defense a new ass. He took Alvin Kamara, picked him up. Fucking like, have you ever played Mario 64 where Mario grabs Bowser and fucking spins him around and throws him out of there? That's what Taysom Hill did to Alvin Kamara. He said, get out of here, pal. And he fucking scored 1,000,000 touchdowns. So you really hate to see that if you are a Kamara owner. But if you have Taysom Hill right now, you are chef's kiss, magnifique. You are in an excellent spot. Next up, we got the Ravens at the Giants. And I don't want to start any of these guys. Now, I can do the mental gymnastics if Rashad Master Bateman does not play to talk myself into playing Devin Duvernay. I can definitely see myself doing that. But again, in a normal 10 or 12 team league, do you need to do that? Probably not. This Giants team has taken the expectations that I had on them and fucking stomped on them. Just stomped directly on them. I know Daboll's a good coach. I knew that going into the season, but I didn't think this guy was day one going to make an impact and turn this team around. Daniel Jones is still Daniel Jones. He's still not very good, but the Giants, Daboll, he gets the most out of these guys. It's impressive. And people are talking about, oh my God, the Giants like the worst 4-1 team ever. No, they're not. No, they're not. Sure, the skill of the team might not be the best, like the players themselves, but Daboll himself is able to fucking mold these guys into tip-top shape. He's finding the best out of the worst. It's truly impressive, honestly. Just as a football fan in general, it is impressive what Daboll is doing. Speaking of the Giants, they don't really have any receivers I'm super interested in. I'm Rick James, bitch. Richie James Jr. is a sit. Darius Slayton is a sit as well. He's listed twice. They have some other receivers as well. Kadarius Toney, could he play? Could he not play? Who even fucking cares at this point? Darius Slayton is the only interesting one. If all of those guys miss, Galladay, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, then I could see myself starting Darius Slayton, but I know that the risk is immense. Like, he could literally see 0 targets. He saw 0 targets for his first 2 starts of the season. Last week, he looked good up against the Packers. He's a guy that I want to stash on my team, but he's not a guy that I'm running out there to play this week. Super excited about Devin Duvernay. Devin Duvernay versus Slayton, I think I'd rather lean with Duvernay if you had both of them. I think he could have a good game against the Giants, but again, this Giants team has really turned things around. They also have Demarcus Robinson and Rashad Bateman. Bateman's banged up. Demarcus Robinson, we all know who Demarcus Robinson is, and he's just not the best. Next up, we got the Buccaneers at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers got a train ran on them. The Pittsburgh Steelers got put like the kid that gets bullied in those old movies, and they put him in the toilet, and they give him a fucking swirly. They got hit with everything in the book. They got the shit kicked out of him. That game wasn't even close. Josh Allen could have stood in the pocket, did like 7 360s like he's making a Call of Duty montage, and launched the fucker to Gabe Davis 50,000 yards down the field, and he would have scored. Like, the Steelers defense had zero answers. They had no answers for that offense at all. Kenny Pickett was running around like a fucking chicken with his head cut off in the pocket. Kenny Pickett gets up and he starts trying to fight these guys because they're hitting Pickett late. It was just an all-time crazy game. I mean, it was a shit kicking, but it was kind of interesting. Pickett looks like there's nothing you can even take away from those games. Like, he didn't look great against the Jets, didn't look good against the Bills, but what was he supposed to do against the Bills? I mean, even good quarterbacks like shit their pants against the Bills, so I didn't really expect much. What I did see, though, was a heavy target share for Johnson and Pickens, so I'm going to keep playing Deontay Johnson and Pickens. Johnson kind of got back his dropsies, his butterfingers that he's had over the last couple of years. I think he works on that as he gets more time with Pickett, but obviously that's something that's far from ideal. Pickens, I talked about this last week, how Pickens and Pickett have that connection, not just because their names sound similar and you might mess up their names. It's actually because they were both on the second team in camp practicing together. So they have a connection already. So George Pickens and Deontay Johnson up against the Bucs are a start. They're not ideal starts, but they're guys I will play. For the Bucs, you're obviously rolling out Mike Evans. Mike Evans is looking amazing right now. Mike Evans has been what I hoped he was going to be in the offseason. I really was one of the people talking up Mike Evans a ton, and he has paid off ever since that fucking wrestling match he had with Marshawn Lattimore in week 2 up against the Saints. Godwin is back at full capacity. Didn't play the best last week, but I do think he will have quite a good game here up against the Steelers. I love Mike Evans and Chris Godwin this week. Then the Bucs have Russell Gage. Cole Beasley retired on them. They have Julio Jones. None of those guys are really start-worthy in my book. And then Chase Claypool gets a decent amount of targets last week. But let's be honest with you, I'm going to need to see a bunch of games in a row where Chase Claypool actually does something before I want to believe it. And I definitely don't want to believe it up against the Bucs defense. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers at the LA Rams, and finally, the bad man is gone. Matt Rule has been fired. You're out of here, pal. Hit him with one of those, like, MLB, when the ump's like, you're out! Like, one of those, but, like, he fucking screams the shit and does, like, a cool move. You're out, pal. Get the fuck out of here. Matt Rule, your ass is grass, pal. See you later. Bye-bye, pal. Adios, mis amigo. Thank God that guy is gone. Thank God. Baker gets hurt, high ankle sprain, out for 4 weeks. They're saying he's not going to require surgery, but he's going to be out for a decent amount of time. PJ Walker, XFL legend, now going to be the starting quarterback. If you look at the splits, and I'm not talking about the splits like fucking Gabby Douglas in the Olympics, but I'm talking about the splits like the splits when Baker's the quarterback versus PJ Walker. PJ Walker targets DJ Moore at a much higher clip. The matchup against the Rams isn't ideal, but I'm thinking we might get a DJ Moore redemption arc here with PJ Walker under center. Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford appear to continue to link up at the local IHOP every single morning because Cooper Kupp has continued to get peppered Salt Bae style with targets by Matthew Stafford. It doesn't matter. It doesn't Matthew Stafford. It doesn't matter if Matthew Stafford goes out there and plays like complete and utter dog shit. If it looks like he sucks, complete and ucker. Uckus. That boy is an uckus. Have you ever heard Man's Not Hot? From a couple years ago. That was a stupid joke right there, but that's what I thought of when I was talking. And again, I don't really cut too much out of these videos. But even when Matthew Stafford is sucking absolute donkey cock out there, Cooper Kupp is still feasting. He is eating like it's Thanksgiving dinner, and he keeps getting peppered, even when Stafford literally looks awful. Like, Stafford will throw the ball that is an absolute duck going through the air. The thing is, have you ever seen that clip of Tim Tebow dropping back and throwing the ball and it, like, spins? Instead of spiraling, it, like, spins like this and then hits the dirt, like, 5 feet away. Stafford will throw a ball just like that to Allen Robinson, and then 2 seconds later, cork up a fucking missile like it's out of North Korea and hit Cooper Kupp directly in the chest. It's amazing how good Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford are together. So I'm going to continue to roll out Cooper Kupp, but I'm sure you already knew that. Shi Smith, Robbie Anderson, don't want to start any of those guys. I barely even want to start DJ Moore, but the comeback narrative is kind of strong in my opinion with PJ Walker. And then the Rams, they've got Al Robinson, Ben Skoranek. At this point, Al Robinson is just droppable. You could just drop him like it's hot, like it's a Snoop Dogg song. man, oh man, like if Cooper Kupp gets hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, maybe Robinson will ascend. But if that doesn't happen, I don't really feel anything for Robinson. Cardinals at Seahawks is up next here. Hollywood Brown. Obviously, you start this guy every single week. Now, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be hopscotching his way back on into the lineup next week. I think it was a 6-game suspension, so he should be back next week. And then we'll see what happens. But right now, I'm still going to continue to ride the Hollywood Brown train. The guy continues to be peppered with targets. And I've talked about this so much that I've beaten it like a dead horse, but it's true. I really thought the team brought in Hollywood Brown to be this deep down the field stretcher, this super fast player that is something different for this Cardinals offense. But in reality, the team just wants to force feed him the ball. And again, that's great for fantasy. I just did not think this is what would happen. The Seahawks defense is no bueno, so I like Mr. Hollywood Brown. Even though Kyler Murray, Kyler Murray hasn't been awful, right? He hasn't been bad. But like, where you drafted him, he's been fine, right? He hasn't really been a bust or anything, but he just, like, you could see, like, you're thinking going into the season, like, he has that number one quarterback upside. Like, he could be the guy. And maybe the missing piece is D-Hop. Once D-Hop comes back, then maybe that's, like, the final piece in the Thanos gauntlet, and magically he's unlocked. But am I saying that for sure? No, I'm not. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Man, I don't think I've ever been more wrong about two receivers than I have been about Metcalf and Lockett. And Geno, I guess. I thought Geno Smith was going to be awful. And look, hands up, I know. I know what I said. I made fun of Geno Smith. I said all types of things. I'm like, Horsecock Drew Lock should be the starter. That was so wrong. Geno Smith looks amazing. But everything I thought in the summer, like, it made sense at the time. Going into the year, no one thought this 34-year-old quarterback, who's basically been a backup his whole entire career, or 32-year-old, however old Geno is, was magically going to transform. Fucking Avengers, Autobots assemble, whatever. You get what I'm saying. But, like, he was going to become this guy that we've never seen before. It's like something crazy happened. Like, I don't know what happened, but he's amazing. That ball that he threw to Tyler Lockett looked like a vintage Russell Wilson throw to Tyler Lockett. It was honestly, like, I almost ejaculated when I saw that throw. That's how good it was. So Lockett looks like he's in a big spot. Metcalf looks like he's in a huge spot. This game reeks of points. You can smell it right through the screen. I love Lockett and Metcalf here. Rondale Moore comes back. Doesn't really do much. They've got Greg Dortch. Not starting either of them. And then the Seahawks also have, like, D. Eskridge. But again, Metcalf and Lockett are the guys. Next up, we move to the best game on the slate. And I just said the last game reeked of points. This game, you could smell the points from miles away. The no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. And man, oh man, am I excited about this game. Now, the Chiefs wide receivers, let's just keep it 100. I have no idea what to think about them. I have Juju listed as a starter because I expect this game to be a tit-for-tat, high-scoring, back-and-forth fucking haymaker slugfest. So, I'm going to roll out Juju. I think he's the number one receiver on the team, but MVS looked good last night. Cole Hardman has had, looked good at points. Sky Moore seems like he has the chance to, maybe as the season kind of chugs along, that he could potentially be a big part of this team. Right now, I trust Juju the most, so I'm going to roll him out there. Again, not with the supreme amount of confidence, but the upside of this matchup is just so juicy, so high. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are must-starts. Everyone seemed to be nervous to start Gabe Davis last week, and I told everyone, hey, I'm going to keep rolling Gabe Davis out there because he wasn't healthy the last couple of games. Maybe he's healthy this game, and maybe he can go crazy. He put up one of those Randy Moss vintage stat lines where he had 3 catches for a zillion yards and 2 touchdowns. The Randy Moss one, I think, is 3 catches, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 170 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Gabe Davis had only 2 touchdowns. What a schmuck, right? Shitty stat line. But yeah, great game out of him. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is an auto start. Those other Chiefs receivers, if you're in a deep league, you can talk yourself into them. But besides that, they're pretty risky. Isaiah McKenzie could also have a good game. But again, his health is kind of up in the air also. Next, we move to Sunday Night football. The Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles. In this game, I like CD Lamb. Now, it did seem like last week they were going to potentially let Dak start last week against the Rams. Then we get to this week, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe Dak starts this week. But in reality, I don't think that's the most smart move. It seems like, based upon what I remember looking at, the Cowboys have an easy game next week. So instead of feeding Dak to the fucking Eagles, whose defense looks unreal, their offense is amazing, why not just wait a week? Then give them a softer game. I think that's what they're going to end up doing. Even with Cooper Rush, though, I still trust CeeDee Lamb. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have been a little bit frustrating because they're both really good. Jalen Hurts' rushing upside kind of hurts them, but kind of hurts them, and his last name is Hurts. Very fucking funny. But A.J. Brown has looked really good. So is Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith's definitely more hit or miss than A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown didn't have a great game last week. I had him on my team. It's okay, though. I'm not just panicking over one game. I think this game could also be pretty high scoring, but it's a primetime game, so prepare for immense sadness. Michael Gallup and Noah Brown are sits for me, but once Dak Prescott returns, I'll be fine rolling out Michael Gallup, especially in a better matchup. And then Quez Watkins is going to be a sit for me. I am definitely a little bit worried about Lamb this week, though, because he is going up against Darius Slay. So now we move to Monday Night Football. Get ready to fucking take a knife and stab yourself in the eyes repeatedly. The Denver Broncos country, let's ride, up against the Chargers in LA. Now, the way Russell Wilson, he choked the game so hard, and then he comes to the fucking podium, and he's standing there, and he's giving all these answers. It's like, whatever, I don't care about this. I'm like barely paying attention. I like to watch the post game though. I think it's pretty interesting. And then, as he's walking off, he says Broncos country, and then as he's like off the podium, he goes, let's ride. It's like, dude, is this guy like a fucking character? Like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, it almost seems like it's scripted. Like, he comes into the game with like this script and he just reads it all off. Win or loss. Win or loss. It's bananas. Banana lands how this guy acts. It's crazy. You want a danger witch? That's a little dangerous. Don't worry, it's a little spicy. The guy's so fucking weird. But hey, this isn't a Russell Wilson roast. Courtland Sutton's a start. Even with Russell Wilson playing terrible, Courtland Sutton still looking good. Mike Williams, you got to start him every week. His upside is just the biggest building in the world, like one of those skyscrapers in Dubai. His downside is the fucking basement. Keenan Allen, or his floor is the basement. Keenan Allen, where the fuck is this guy? Like, you think he's coming back, and then he doesn't come back. He went to go get milk, and he never returned. I hope Keenan Allen does come back this week. Broncos defense does look good, but I'm still going to roll Keenan Allen out. If he plays, Jerry Jeudy's a sit for me. I just don't trust Russell Wilson enough to have a bunch of receivers that are eating, and then Hamler's a sit, and then Joshua Palmer's a sit, unless Keenan Allen does not play. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And if you have any questions about week number 6, please make sure you ask it down below in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And come back later for the running back start or sit video. I love you guys so much. And as always, good boy.